And welcome into BryanSports.com and the Extra Point. I'm Jim Funderburg along with Coach Klein and Kevin Klein, the head coach of the Bryan Golden Bears after, 3 years that you've been through, the last three.
Year number 4, huh?
How do we make this one even better, Coach?
We got our work cut out for us. I think that's part of the fun and part of the challenge in it. I think the group before has really set the bar pretty high. The last two groups have obviously been teams that are setting school records and things like that. So that's a lot for this group to live up to.
Really is. Looking at you guys though already, I've been to the Defiance scrimmage and then obviously to meet the team night the other night against Anthony Wayne. It looks like though the first team that you have right now, the new bunch, have really come on and it looks like they've taken that challenge over right now.
Yeah, I think they're excited about that. And a lot of those kids that are seniors for us now, they were kind of in the shadows of that last class that we had that everybody talked about, and rightfully so. That last group of kids we had was exceptional and really stood out. And like I said before, did some things that no other teams have done. And yeah. I think these guys look at that and they say, hey, we want to be like that too. We want a little recognition for it, and this is their chance to get some recognition. They're going to have to earn it, but I think they're excited for that challenge.
I'll tell you, they have looked good, especially the first team in the scrimmages that I've seen so far. It looks like they're really ready to take that challenge too right now.
I've talked to my wife about this too, and I think after the first one especially, I said, one thing I'll say about these kids, I don't know how we're going to end up this year, but they play hard. They said they give really good effort. They're out there, they're working really hard, and that's all you can really ask of the kids is to play with as much energy and intensity as they can, and I think our guys are doing that. And it looks like they're having some fun too, and hopefully they continue that.
I think that's important too on the high school level.
Oh,
it can't be a job. It really can't be.
Absolutely. We have such few number of kids when you look at the percentages that go on and play in college. But this is, high school football is the only time they're going to get a chance to do this, and so I hope they look back and have fun with it.
Yeah, I hope so too. Well, let's go through a couple of them right now, because obviously the number one name that comes out that we lost, Austin Schindler, so you're looking for a quarterback now for the first time in your tenure.
Yeah.
And it looks like you've got a couple of good replacements there too.
Yeah, we got, Austin was an exceptional athlete, and obviously he stood out in this area with the awards and stuff that he was able to accomplish and rack up last year. And now, the torch is being passed, and Brandon Dean's the one last year that really started to step up behind him. Got a start in there, and he got some playing time. A lot of it was late in games, but he still got some playing time at that position, and I thought he did a really good job. We started to see him progress last year. In the off season, he's an incredible worker. Did a great job for us in the weight room. Has great leadership skills and is really competitive. Has really taken his game to the next level, and I've been happy to see what he's done so far. Different skill sets. We've talked pretty openly about that. When he stays within himself and does what he's good at, I think he runs the offense very well. As long as I think it's inevitable, people are going to compare him and Austin. I don't think it's necessarily fair to him because, like I said, he's got different sets of skills, and as long as he does what he's capable of doing and plays to his strengths, I think we'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, there's a physical difference in size to start with, between the two. But if you look back last year at Archibald, Wasion, those are teams that didn't have great big quarterbacks. And I'll tell you, there's a couple very good quarterbacks in those football teams.
Yeah, Brandon's prepared himself, and I think that's good. It's hard when you're the backup. Last year it was a hard role for him, I think, because, like I said, I think he's pretty competitive.
Yes.
I think he's got some skill sets where he can play the game, but he just happened to be stuck behind Austin last year, so it was a lot of waiting and preparing, and he's done that. He didn't get frustrated, he took the time that he had and he made the most of it, and then, now he's ready to kind of lead our offensive team.
You were lucky last year, though, too, because you had leads at halftime almost every night that were big enough that you could get him an awful lot of playing time in that second half.
We were fortunate where we got him into some of those games, and I think we counted and looked back, and I think he ended up playing in like 8 games or something like that last year, and including one of the playoff games, he got some time in there. And so I think that's really valuable experience. And even though it's maybe late in the games and stuff, I think it just gives a kid a good idea of what to expect on Friday nights. And I think Brandon's prepared for that.
In the backfield with him right now, who do you expect to be the running backs this year?
That's one of the biggest questions right now. If I'm looking at us, I think right now we're running back by committee. I don't know that we have anybody that's really stood out to us, even through the 3 scrimmages. We've rotated a couple different kids in there. Lane Azarillo is one. We haven't got a chance to take a look at Lane. He's been injured all 3 scrimmages, so he's got some experience from the past, but we haven't seen him, and he's been out out of our practices and stuff here lately. So we're looking to see what happens when he gets back in the mix. But Lucas Grimm has been back there a little bit for us, and Lucas does a nice job running the ball. Drew Ridgway's another kid, and we like the way Drew blocks. And then Damon Belts, who's a sophomore, is a pretty tough, hard-nosed kid that runs downhill. Yeah, he had a couple really nice runs for us in that last scrimmage. So I think those three, plus with Lane in that mix, are really kind of battling that out. And we like different things about each one of them, so I don't know that we've really decided who that's going to be or if it's going to be kind of splitting some time back there.
Sure. Well, that's a good problem to have. To have maybe four very good candidates, so they maybe could step up as you go.
Yeah. I think those kids have all handled that really well so far, and they're all kind of still competing for it, and I think they all see that there's a place where we can use all of them at some point in time.
You lost some wide receivers, but you bring Rao and Nisley back, and that's nice to have a core like that to come back. Who are the other guys that are going to play with those guys?
Well, you mentioned Rao and Nisley. They've been really consistent for us in the preseason stuff through the scrimmages and things. I think it shows that they've got some play experience out there, and they just understand the game a little bit more than some of the other guys. But we've had some other guys really step in and do a nice job. Gavin Saul's one. He got injured early last season, was out a lot of the year. Just a nice physical receiver, a big kid that we can throw the ball to, and he's physical and he hits and he blocks well, and so that helps us out quite a bit. He's been a nice addition for us. And then we rotate a number of different guys in there. In our slot position, taking Pendergrass's spot is going to be Paris Creek and Zach Dean. They get a lot of work there, and Jake Kuba's been rotating in those positions as well. So, we like the receiving core we have. We've got some young guys that are in the mix too in our JV and that are catching the ball well. I don't know if they're quite ready for Friday nights, but we've been really happy with that receiving group and how hard that group's working.
Offensive line, it always starts there. Yeah. And, I was over at the 7-on-7 at Hicksville about a month ago, and the one thing I noticed were all the big guys that you had along there that day. It looks like you've got a real good, solid bunch of offensive linemen.
I think we're changing a little bit as a team. We have more big kids this year than what we've had in the last couple of years, which has given us some depth at the offensive line and defensive line positions. And so we're excited about that. I like what the kids are doing up front, and obviously Bronson Beck and Zach Phillips are the two guys that we bring back, and couldn't be happier with how those two have just taken ownership of that. And then we got some other guys that have again, been really patient, sitting, waiting, and now are getting their chance to play. Ethan Retcher's been really solid for us up front. Kyle Stoller at center, and Chris Whitler is a big tackle, a young kid that's playing for us, and we like that first group especially. And we got a couple subs we've been able to plug in and feel pretty comfortable with up front.
Offense very similar to what we've seen the last couple of years, Coach.
It's like I said before, Brandon's got some different skill sets than what we've had with Austin in the past, and same offense, but I think you tweak a little bit of the play calling stuff to cater to what his strengths are, what his skills are, and just the same with our other quarterbacks that we have this year. They just have some different talents and different abilities, and so I think we try to put them in a position to be successful within the offense.
Flip it over to the other side right now. Obviously, you talked a little bit about the defensive front, but you've got to somehow take a spot that, in Jones. Jake Jones was a major player. Brock Minor was a big player. Yeah. Ponzak in that secondary. So maybe one could argue that your biggest hits this year are come on the defensive side, even over the offensive side.
I feel like that's where we probably have the least experience returning. And those guys that you had mentioned before with Jake and Brock and Ponzak, you're looking at guys, and Dakota McNanny's another one. You're looking at guys that they started since their sophomore year. So we've had the same guys, as much as we talk about Austin on offense, we've had the same guys in that secondary for the last 3 years.
Sure.
And so now it's replacing those guys. And we feel we've had a lot of different guys, again, that we've rotated in and out. We're starting to develop a first group there. Derek Nisley's got some experience at that safety spot, and he really seems to be settling into that. Nate Rao was playing one of the corner spots, and then we've had some other young players kind of step up and fill in at the other positions. Paris Creek's another one that's been patiently waiting and now is getting a chance to play some corner for us and has looked pretty good in preseason.
Well, I'll tell you, it's been fun so far watching the scrimmages. But it all gets started here pretty soon.
Yeah, scrimmages don't count for anything. So.
They really don't. I want to talk about one thing that I was lucky enough to see, and more people need to show up. And I thought it was a great idea. You had that midnight practice to open up the season.
Yeah.
And you had the 7-on-7, and Shimmy and Jones and Minor all came back. And I'm not sure whether you saw the same thing that I saw, but I saw our young guys, the guys that are here, go out there toe to toe with the old guys that night. And I tell you, there was a lot of talking coming out of the mouths of the Miners and the Joneses and the Schindlers, all right? And there was a lot of answering coming out of the other side of that thing with the Deans and again the Nisleys and the Rows, and it was really fun to watch that 7-on-7.
Yeah, it was a neat little practice thing, and those guys that graduated, obviously they were invested in this program and what we've been able to do, and it was fun to have them out, and I'm glad that they participated in it, and it was more fun than anything else. I think both ways. I think our kids and our current team enjoyed competing against them, and obviously those guys were great at coming back and just being a part of it, and just a lot of fun, and I don't always make really good decisions with practices and stuff like that, but that one seemed to work out and seemed to be a lot of fun for everybody.
I think it did, and I almost envisioned that down the road where you're going to have a crowd that night watching that practice, because it was just that much fun, and the energy level was just through the roof with that crowd.
Yeah, it was pretty neat. It was funny because we still did a lot of our same practice things, but just allocating a little bit of time here and there and just being under the lights for the kids was a lot different. So they seemed to respond to that very positively. I think that's something we'll do going forward.
I think it was a great idea. A couple things I want to clean up here real quick, and then we'll take a break and we'll talk about Van Wert. First of all, this helmet that's sitting in front of us, it seems like we tweak that helmet every year, just like we tweak our football team. We've got a little different looking helmet this year too.
Yeah, we've stayed with that, the gold. We went to that last year for the first time in a long time. We went back to the gold helmets, and I think our kids like that. And then the design on it was just something a little bit different. Just changed up the decals on the helmet. Again, just trying to create. I think it's just trying to create something that these guys can make their own and put their own stamp on, and I think they're excited about doing the same thing on the season.
It's fun to see something like that, and I think it probably will work that way. Each group has to step up and take ownership.
Yeah.
And if they don't, then you're going to start having some fall off as far as kids being here and years and everything else. So it's a lot of fun to let them put their stamp on that. Behind us too, I know you've got some new gear, some new weight gear, and we'll get have Zach take some pictures of that too. But it's always nice to have support and be able to come up with equipment like that.
Yeah, and this was an athletic booster driven program, so it benefits everybody here at the school. It's in athletics, whether it's a volleyball team or a cheerleading team or a swim team or whoever, soccer teams, basketball teams. We've been pretty fortunate. Bryan Arnold and TK have done a tremendous job just sitting down and figuring out what we need, and this was one of the needs that we had, is to replace some of the older equipment in here. We feel, again, very fortunate that we have the backing of the community to support us and to get these kind of things. And so right now we're looking at really a three-phase process, I think, and this was probably one of the biggest parts of it, is just getting the new racks and some of the new weights and some of the new equipment in here. So it looks like a weight room now. Before it looked like a weight room, but it kind of hodgepodge together, and now it looks like a weight room for any high school or college team.
It's been fun to watch the progression of the facilities in the last couple of years. The press box last year, and even just some of the changes at the press box. I mean, it's just a little nicer. They've had a little time to fine-tune a few things. It's just fun to watch all the changes.
They do a great job. All the way from Mrs. Savage and Rob Rossworm. They do a tremendous job with this facility out here in the game field. And we got play clocks this year, and you had mentioned the press box. It's really neat to be a part of it in a time where I feel like we're growing.
Really is. We're going to take a break here on Extra Point. When we come back, we're going to talk about Van Wert and also the rest of the conference right after this on BryanSports.com. Welcome back to Extra Point. Coach, let's talk a little bit about, first of all, the conference, because there's going to be some changes this year around the conference that people are going to see. Let's just talk coaches, first of all. Biggest coaching change probably over Patrick Henry, where Coach Inselman retires. Gosh, to have a program like that one, where it just seemed like every year they reloaded and reloaded and reloaded. That's going to be different over there at PH this year.
Yeah, and Coach Inselman is a class act all the way. I've gotten to know him a little bit over the years, and just a tremendous person. I knew his staff pretty well, and just a great guy. I can't say enough good things about him and what he's done for the sport of football and for our league. He obviously won a state title at one point in time, and is just a tremendous competitor. And it's going to be different without him. And replacing him is one of his former players, and Joe Kirkendall. And Joe and I got to know each other a little bit when I was at Edgerton. He was the head coach at Arcadia, and we scrimmaged against each other. And Joe runs a good program as well, and then obviously he went to Lipsick from there and has done a tremendous job at Lipsick. So, I think replacing Bill is not an easy thing. With Joe coming in, he'll do a good job with that program and continue the success that Bill's had.
How do you get something that is that successful? How do you perpetuate something like that on a high school level?
Yeah, I don't know. I wish I knew his secrets, but he had, Bill had a stretch in there. I think he won like 8 straight league titles or something. I don't know if that'll ever be done again. It's just, I think it's one of those things you hear where success breeds success, and if that's the case, he did a tremendous job with those kids and got them to play hard and just kept winning games over there. Yeah,
that was amazing. Over at Delta, Coach Vickers goes to Swanton now. Okay,
yeah.
So we've got a change at Delta, and we have a Coach Vickers who's a familiar face around the NWOIL, goes over to Swanton this year.
Yep. And Mike's been a winner wherever he's been, and he's known for turning programs around. And he also went out and he got Tim Spees to come in and help him out. Those two were together at Genoa and really rebuilt that program. Before they took over, I think they had won, I don't even remember, like 3 or 4 games in a 3-year span of time, and then turned them into the powerhouse that they were. So, those two together are a pretty deadly combination, and they definitely know football and know how to motivate kids. And I think they saw something in Swanton and liked the challenge of going over there. It's a program that's been down for a little bit, but has some really good kids coming through right now. I think they like the idea of going in there and getting those kids motivated to play. And, I think they're excited about this season. They'll be a tough team to beat.
Yeah, they will be. I think in looking at the conference, though, this might be the most balanced, for my money, that this conference has been for a long time.
Looking at it, not just us losing some of the key players, but there's also some other key skilled players with Sunken being gone. We had a lot of quarterbacks that had started, all of them had started since their sophomore year, between us and Archibald and Wasion. You're talking about 3 really good athletes in the league. And so I think there's a lot of question mark now is who's going to be the next team to produce the athletes. And we're seeing some of the teams that have struggled in the past are starting to get classes coming through that they've been looking forward to.
Oh, yeah, Swanton especially. They've been bragging about those guys forever.
Montpelier's another one. Montpelier has a lot of returners off last year's team, and they've been playing pretty young, and I think they're looking forward to finally getting some kids now that are juniors and seniors that are good athletes and can compete. Unfortunately, it'll be the last year we play them, but
sure.
I think they're excited about their season too.
That would have to, I would think, motivate them a little bit more to be able to, say, okay, that last year in that conference, we had maybe our best year that we've had for 10 or 15 years.
And I think they're looking forward to building something they can carry into their new conference. And when they go into the TAC, I think they want to go in with some momentum. So, yeah, I think they're excited about what they're doing over there.
We changed the schedule entirely this year. Okay?
Yeah, we'll change it again next year. But yes.
Do you like that? Do you like the shake-up like that?
Yeah, it's been the same for so long. I think it's kind of nice to play. You're still playing the same teams, but just to play them in a different order, I think creates a little different atmosphere for us. Scouting-wise, I've watched when we trade film. I watched the same teams the last 3 years. I've watched the same scout films the last 3 years when it comes to who they're matching up against and stuff. So I think as coaches, it's kind of refreshing just to get that little bit of a change, because you'll see them versus different opponents. You're playing teams at different times during the year, and that'll be kind of fun.
You get a chance to play Patrick Henry early rather than late.
Yeah, I think every game we played him, it's been like terrible rains, and
it has been. It's always
cold, and
it's been terrible.
And hopefully that's not the case, because it'll be week 2. So
yeah, hopefully it's going to be really nice and
so it'll be interesting to see what happens when you play them early in the season. It'll be different. And I think that's exciting in and of itself.
The schedule doesn't do you any favors, because when you talk about some of the teams we just talked about, you've got to go on the road to play, at Delta this year. You've got to go on the road to play at Liberty Center this year. You're on the road at Swanton this year.
Yeah, we have some
pretty big road games.
We've got some long road games too. When you really start thinking about that, Delta and Swanton, Wasion, those are all pretty good trips from Bryan. Within an hour, but right around there. So not only are we traveling, but we're going quite a bit of distance there to play those teams.
They pick you as the favorites, let's say, going in. All the coaches say Bryan's the team to beat. Delta's right there with you, okay? But in my notes that I look at, boy, it just seems to me like there's probably 5 or 6 teams that could be right there on top.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We always talk about preseason polls, and they I think it is more for the media than anything else. It's
Sure.
just a starting point for teams, and when we talk about it as a team, and I asked the seniors kind of what they thought about it, and the upperclassmen, and they were of the same opinion as what we were as coaches. Is that we really haven't done anything to earn that ranking. I think it's based off of past. It's based off the last 2 years and
Sure.
what those kids had done, and so I think these guys look at that and they say that's nice. It's a good honor, but it's not based off of anything we've done, and I think they look forward to getting into the season, just to see how that's going to shake out. We'd rather be picked number 1 at the end of the season.
Heck yeah,
that's
after week number 10.
So I think that's what they're excited about, is putting their own mark on that and making that mean something.
Very first game, obviously you go out of conference, you go down to Van Wert. We were talking just a little bit about that last year. It wasn't much of a game. I mean, they came up here. It was a high-scoring game. Both teams scored a lot of points. But you're telling me now that this was a young Van Wert team, and probably see a pretty tough team on week number 1.
Yeah, last year they switched over offensively. They went to the spread, and really watching them on film, it's our offense. I'm sitting there and it's like this is this play for us. This is this play for us, and so both ways, I don't think they're going to have trouble simulating us in practice.
Sure.
We should be able to simulate them pretty well in practice, and so we should be able to get a good look going into this week in terms of the game for Friday. They were pretty young last year. He played a lot of sophomores last year. Those kids are now juniors, and returns a really good quarterback. Watching him on film, he's a tough matchup for us because he's not a stationary quarterback. He moves a little bit. He's got a good arm. He can get the ball out there. And then they've got some speed at the wideout spots. I know they were pretty successful in track this past season. I think he's got some of those track kids out at receiver. So watching them, you can tell they've had a year's experience in the spread offense, and they're starting to get more comfortable with it. So I look at them, and skilled-wise, I think they're pretty good. They do a lot of nice things. Their kids go get the ball. They have a running back they put in the backfield that runs really hard and downhill. So I think offensively they can give you some problems. And then they're always bigger than us.
Right.
You go through their roster, and they've got 5 or 6 kids that are 270, 280, 300.
Yeah.
And we just don't have that. So that's always a concern, trying to match up with some of their big kids up front. So I think defensively, again, same thing. A lot of those skilled players on offense make up their secondary and their linebacker core on defense. So they've got some athletes out there that I think they're excited about. Watching their scrimmage films this year, they did a really good job. Their last scrimmage, they won pretty handily and looked pretty good in it. And I think their kids look like they were more excited and feeling a little more confident than what we've seen in the years past. So I think they're excited to get going as well.
How big is that very first night and winning that very first game for your points this year?
I think it's pretty big. Like I said before, I think this group's eager to prove themselves, and so that's what they've got to do now. It's one thing to sit here and talk about wanting to win and what you've got to do to win, but we got to get out there and we got to actually do that. So I think they're excited about the opportunity to go out and start the season. I think it's pretty big for us in terms of just getting things started the right way and starting to leave their own mark on the program.
Keys to winning on Friday night, Coach?
It's all the basic stuff. I think we have to handle offensively. We got to slow them down a little bit in what they're doing. Like I said, they've got the potential to make big plays. So for us, we really got to play good defense, sound defense, be able to tackle in space. Anytime you play the spread, they're going to complete passes and they're going to break off some runs, but being able to just contain those things and minimize them so they don't get big plays against us will be huge. And then it comes down to taking care of the football. Whether that's you go back and watch our scrimmages, or you watch their game films the same way. That last scrimmage, they turned the team they're playing, they turned them over quite a bit. And we're able to capitalize on a lot of those turnovers. So I think you got to take care of the ball. Otherwise, teams can be very opportunistic. And then we don't always talk about it. You always hear coaches talk about it. Fans don't like to talk about it, but special teams plays a big role. And we haven't done a lot of our special teams live outside of practice, and so that's always a concern going in, is what your kicking game is going to be like and how that's going to transition into field position and things like that. So we feel like we've got a kid that can kick some field goals. We did a little bit of that in the scrimmages, so we're excited to have Josh Jones back, but we haven't done a lot of that stuff live yet, so that'll be the telltale, is going through that first game and seeing how well our special teams do.
I wanted to mention Josh one time because, again, I think that's the one guy maybe we missed in our conversations, but he has looked very good. in preseason so
You know,
far.
he got some experience last year at it, and he's a kid that really worked hard in the off season at being more consistent and you know, strengthening up his leg. And we feel like that's another weapon that we have this year that is a little more consistent than what we've had the last couple of years. So it's nice to have him. You know, you saw it in the scrimmages. He's got a little bit of range to him, so it makes a difference when you get down in there, play call wise and stuff, because you feel comfortable with. We can get points out of this, so you know, let's take care of the ball, and if we got to get 3, let's get 3.
Yeah, it's a whole new weapon for you guys, really, and a chance maybe every time you're down there to add points and not come away without points at some point in time, especially with a new bunch. Well, it's going to be fun. Obviously, the ball game will be on BryanSports.com live with audio only. And everything will start at 7:15, and then on Saturday night it'll be on BMU Channel 3. Obviously, you can go up and watch the replays anytime on BryanSports.com. Coach, we're looking forward to it. I always say it. It's hard to imagine that last year has gone and this year is here.
Yeah. Okay. This is always, they always joke and say this is the fastest 10 weeks, but it really is. Like we'll be rolling now. You know, it's hard to believe that this is week 1. Before you know it, we'll be sitting here and it'll be week 9, 10, and you know, hopefully we're still smiling and having a good time.
Yeah, we are, and hopefully there's still a week 11 and 12 and maybe a 13.
We'll take that.
We will take that. Kevin Klein been our guest as always here on The Extra Point. We thank you for watching us here on BryanSports.com.